For a second day, the waters are a no-go zone, and while the warning has been sent out, some boaters found themselves caught up in rough seas and having to wait it out before they are rescued. Keishla Adderley spoke with Bahamas Air Sea Rescue Association Operations Manager Chris Lloyd about managing it all.
Gazing at the harbor, it seems like a perfect day on the water. But for a second day, the harbor is the safe haven as rough seas persist and B.A.S.R.A helps to manage sea emergencies like the vessel believed to be meandering somewhere in the northern Bahamas. B.A.S.R.A Operations Manager Christopher Lloyd.
There's a overdue vessel, sailing vessel from Grand Bahama, unknown what part, whether it headed east or west, but going to Marsh Harbor. Obviously, with the rage here, it's worse in the Abacos, and I've communicated to the reporting source and the U.S. Coast Guard that nobody was getting in through any of the cuts in the Abacos, and this vessel, we have not had any distress calls, so this vessel may be standing offshore, as we did with the catamaran, and out of cell phone range and maybe even out of VHF range, but we have B.A.S.R.A Abaco trying to communicate with the vessel so that we can pass this back to the reporting source, which was the father, that everybody is safe.
Meantime, B.A.S.R.A is also keeping an eye on a vessel which had run out of fuel in Acklins, where there's reportedly no fuel on the island, and the fate of a 100-foot catamaran which ran aground, all while port officials managed vessel diversions into Nassau.
A number of vessels that did make it to Nassau and were attempting to come in through the west entrance, but redirected by Harbor Control to the east end. Coming in from the north side, the east end of the harbor means going through the Narrows or Porgy Rock Cut, or even around Porgy Rock. This is not the normal route. You would normally use the east end of the harbor coming from Exumas or down south. So a little trickier, also with the swells coming over Salt Key. We did end up advising a couple of sailboats, giving them local knowledge on the best route and how to do this, but also ended up with a 100-plus footer aground on what appeared to be a grass bar just by the Narrows. And fortunately, it was low tide, and I'm just waiting confirmation whether they came off on the high tide last night or whether they were going to wait for the high tide.
Lloyd says it's only the second time in his memory that the harbor was shut down, with the exception of the approach of a hurricane, and he's hoping that rough seas send a smoke signal to private boaters who are this year, for the first time, being made to take their safety more seriously.
Locally, this is the first full year that the port have implemented private vessel safe boating inspections. It started middle of last year to allow the inspectors, but you are going to be inspected, and this is something that B.A.S.R.A pushed for years, to whether you have life jackets, even more importantly, a marine VHF radio. You need help, you see a boat on the horizon, you don't know their cell number, you may not be in cell phone range, but everybody monitors channel 16 so that you can get help quickly. You don't.
Keishla Adderley, ZNS Network News.